coverage here on Arise News of Nigeria's 2023 presidential inauguration event. So now it's not so much in the bag, but in the corner pocket, to be more accurate. The new president, Bola Tinubu, has potted the last ball on the table and has won the ultimate Nigerian championship, ending the run of his rivals for now.
Indeed, you could say that it's a less than perfect start, with questions about legitimacy and legal challenges pending. And there is the rather large matter of public confidence. There's been criticism of him and as a political manipulator and as a leader who seems to have problems interacting with the media.
Well, absolutely. But people who know him, including those who like him and don't like him, all agree that he is intelligent, ambitious and calculating, a man who positioned himself to run for president and who worked towards that pursuit for years, a man who has become a Buhari successor, but without the Buhari baggage, or perhaps we should say a different type of baggage. Well, for more on this, we're joined now from our studios in Lagos by the political analyst and executive director of Development Specs Academy, Professor Oke Ikechukwu, who is a member of the editorial board of This Day newspaper and is also a professor of strategic management and human capital development. Professor Ikechukwu, thank you very much indeed for joining us. First of all, I'm sure you've been watching today's proceedings. Having seen that seminal speech that's impressed many people, although it takes a lot to impress you, I wonder if you've pivoted, or at least the people you know have pivoted towards Bola Tinubu and an acceptance of his presidency, even though many people still think that more cast votes against him than did for him.
Well, my take is, good evening, Charles, and, my take is this. Whether they like it or not, he has been sworn in as president, so even if you have issues with that, he's de facto president by law. So that is not part of the facts on the table. I would like to quickly migrate within 45 seconds to how we got here. If you accept the rules of any game, you must also accept the outcome. For Bola Tinubu to become president, people registered because they wanted to vote. There was an electoral designed to do that. Votes were cast. Now, there's the question of presumptive winner and announced winner. So he is president as announced. He has been sworn in. I believe that the larger concern, while the case is still in court, because those who believe they lost, they have a business to ensure that finally the judiciary makes a pronouncement. But in the interim, Nigeria must exist. He has sworn to defend the Constitution. He has made a fantastic speech by some assessment, and I think it's time to begin to hold him to that. So whether he will be there for 4 years or for 30 minutes, the important fact is that for every moment of our national history, we should gain something. And what needs to be gained here are some of the templates people are putting out on the table for him. But one of the things he also needs to note is that the greatest danger threatening him as I speak is members of his party. It's those who are saying everything is all right. It's those who are papering things over. I hope and believe that he will be more strategic than to go around surrounding himself with those who will be telling him that sort of thing. He has inherited a very terrible template, if you like, and situation. No security. I don't need to enumerate them. We all know the details to the point that it's become boring. So imagine he makes an impact on that in the short term, in the medium term, and in the long term, where Nigerians see him solving the problems that they are worried about. Nobody will think about political party. Nobody will think about tickets, etc. So yeah, he's made a speech. He's talked about fuel subsidy. Of course, we are going to see how he'll weather the fallouts from that. And among other pronouncements, unifying the exchange rate, all of that sounds interesting, actually the right thing to do. Now, the thing is to get the alliance for the political counterforces that will be interested in migrating onto the stage in order to challenge whatever is coming on that stage to remove what they've been enjoying.
And I just want to ask you, this transition from from one leader to the other, but on the same platform of the political party APC, does that make the job any easier or more difficult for President Tinubu? I mean, you've talked about the state of the nation, which we all know, record debt profile, rising inflation, increasing poverty, unemployment rate, and all of that. But he's inheriting this from the same APC party, his predecessor, former President Muhammadu Buhari. Will this make it any less difficult for him to navigate?
Not entirely. I think the man is in trouble, really, with what he has inherited. And I think that he must do everything not to continue. You don't speak of continuity in government. This is one man who must ensure there's no continuity from what he inherited, because the indices are scandalous. The evaluation of all the parameters indicate a culture that, to put it mildly, is actually verging on shamelessness to present all of that as a record. So President Tinubu has a duty to ensure that everything, practically everything that this government, outgone government represents, does not get replicated in his tenure. So we're not asking for continuity. He can retain the name of the party, but give good governance. And talking about things being easier, the discipline to follow through. Take, for instance, the experience of the PDP, which was in office for 16 years. First, the Obasanjo regime brought out a fantastic document, the SEETS initiative, SEETS document, NEETS document, which is a SEETS component. Anybody following through with that, along with the monetization policy, would have gotten himself a perfect Nigeria and paid up all the debts. Now, the same party took over 8 years later. Now, it wasn't NEETS. They went on to talk about a 7-point agenda. I don't know if there's anyone who knows one out of the 7 points, not to talk of whether it was carried out. Then what came next? Transformation agenda. From the same government, the same presidency actually, because President Jonathan was vice president to Yar'Adua before he passed. And he said transformation agenda. Now, what was transformed? So you find that we already have absolutely incontrovertible precedent of one party in power pretending to be tendering different policies, all of them designed to move Nigeria forward, but actually mired itself in a culture of incoherence. And the same thing went on and on until they lost. Not because they were designed to lose that election, but because they mismanaged themselves so badly that they helped to throw themselves out of office. Now, Tinubu has been sworn in. APC, in my view, right or wrong, but that's my view, has not left anything for anybody to be proud of in governance, in the image of the nation, in citizenship, loyalty to the nation, in patriotism, in the cohesion of the Nigerian state, and the feeling of inclusivity. In my view, it's scored close to zero on all. But the fact that we also cannot deny is that it has helped us also to be a little more honest about many dishonesties. 20 years ago, nobody would have believed that we could see what we are seeing here in Nigeria. It shows that the political maturity is still far from where it should be. So Tinubu, fantastic strategist if you must, whether you like it or not. Nobody thought he would get the ticket. There are so many things people thought he couldn't do. So let him also shock and surprise us by giving us a new Nigeria. In which case there would be, whether his presidency lasts for how long, whatever. If, for instance, he's upturned in court, let's assume that happens and he has to step aside, he should ensure that as at the time he's stepping aside, people are saying, oh dear, why did this judgment come? That's what he should target. Look at his age. So he's not looking to amuse or entertain anybody. He has to leave a mark. If despite all the forces arrayed against him, he could emerge as president today, he should look up and tell his creator, Lord, for whatever reason you put me here, don't let me be distracted because my people have suffered long enough. That is the way to go about it. So, as I made the point at the beginning, yes, the process of democracy includes the legal process for final validation. That will be going on, but you can't suspend the presidency and say, oh, let's wait for the case to end. That does not make sense. It's not in our law. But what would be foolish is to assume that, oh, with the inauguration, okay, everything is settled. No, we must have a Nigeria, and all of these are part of the processes of national development, if you like, political evolution as well. because many of the actors are going to find themselves on dry land. Many of them do not know as I speak that their visa has expired. When I say expired, exhaustively, and they will not have no forwarding address, etc. But that's a matter for another day.
Yes, and you've certainly made some very interesting, very arresting points there. One of the things you said actually corresponds to what Dr. Dakuku Peterside mentioned earlier when he was here, and that is the fact that Mr. Tinubu may well be a completely different person from the person he was when he was governor. Do you find him, Mr. Tinubu, to be charismatic? I mean, can he hold the attention of a crowd in his grip? Or is he, like his predecessor Buhari, especially with the onset of age, rather awkward, aloof, and perhaps distant?
Well, on the face of it, he, as governor of Lagos State, actually, if you listen to him at that, he had some charisma. He had coming from the Nadeko thing. His manner of speaking was a bit sonorous, if even entertaining. Now, the only way Tinubu can have that kind of effect is to surround himself with people who are so competent that it will be impossible to complain about his government or say, I'm looking for the president. He is not an entertainer. He's not basket mouth. Leadership, you're not becoming a leader in order to be liked. You're becoming a leader in order to affect people's life for the better. For people not to think of government only when there's no light. In fact, if you look at the memory of most people, they only think of government in connection with suffering. Bad road, insecurity, absence of electricity, strange taxes, people doing all kinds of things on the road. And it's not about the Buhari government, it's about the Federal Republic of Nigeria's elite, which has been what you might call a leeching elite that only knows how to take and eat and has no capacity, at least from my experience, to actually drive development. Because let's be factual. There are how many states in the Southeast? 6. It was administered by one person from one office. The states in the North, 21, was run by Sir Ahmadu Bello. The ones in the South by Awolowo. Look at now, in the North, you have 19 different apparatus to drive the same space, and there's not only underdevelopment, but retrogression. You go to the Southeast, you go to the Southwest, many people, they are now talking about political legacy. I mean, there are legacy projects and all of that. You find that some measure of political illiteracy also has crept into our national lexicon and we don't know. Legacy cannot be a building. Our legacy in the Southwest is not the Cocoa House, that is a building. His legacy was education. His legacy was the effort he made to convince everybody going into office that knowledge is what you use for development. Zeke's legacy. Sir Ahmadu Bello's legacy is not building, it's the new consciousness he drove among Northerners that, listen, we have to develop ourselves. Listen, we shouldn't compete where we can't win. Listen, these are our shortcomings. But what do you have a legacy today? Somebody comes to your village or comes to a town, his legacy as a political senator, whatever you choose to call it. Oh, you get a piece of land, he builds a massive statue of a woman probably breastfeeding, and oh, that's his legacy. The people are clapping. That's our democracy dividend. How does that affect their lives? So you find that the level of national leadership, the quality of thinking has become the kind of thing you see only among slightly drunken people and in bars that are not doing good business. Now, the concept of legacy should change. It must begin with leadership signaling. You know, a lot of people are very pessimistic. There's no hope. No. Once a leader gives a signal, you have no choice but to comply. When Buhari took over, all of us in this country saw that there was electricity, to the shock of everybody, non-stop for 3 weeks. People became worried. Why are we having regular power supply? Then the reflexes were not clear, so we reverted to the old. Oh, and there are examples everywhere. Look at when Peter was governor. He came, he met a lot of things. He said, what is this? They say, oh, it is for this purpose. He said, sorry, it's not part of what this state should spend its money on. Others took a cue. Tinubu has a duty to himself, first of all, to convince everybody that, yes, he might have this kind of peculiar profile. Yes, he might have wangled his way to the presidency, but let his performance overwhelm people to silence. And that has to do with the caliber of people he has around him, the ministers he appoints, the level of monitoring. Now, that will then not make anybody's not all good leaders are charismatic in terms of personal appearance. But where he can't deal with the process of public administration, if he begins to outsource his job the way Buhari did, then first of all, we're in a deep hole. If he acts like that, it means we are digging deeper into the hole, and there's a tunnel without light.
Well said. But Professor, can I ask you, do you think Nigerians should be managing the expectations with all that you've put out now? And I also wanted to ask you, if the citizens do have a role in all of this as we set the agenda for this administration?
Well, my first question would be whether there are citizens anymore. Citizens are individuals in a state who owe primary loyalty to the state and who therefore behave in such a way that the state subsists so that they themselves will subsist. We have indigenes of different parts of Nigeria, not citizens anymore. Let's not kid ourselves. And the political leadership emphasizes it. Indigenship is the issue on the table. We from Otubo, we won't take this. We from the kingdom of Ihiala will not. Everywhere is a kingdom. In fact, the way things are going, somebody walking on the road may even declare himself a kingdom. If you ask him where is your dome, the dome component of your kingdom, he says it's in his pocket. Now, what point am I leading up to? The people are no longer part of the political conversation in Nigeria. You might see them at rallies when they hire them and bring them in buses to stadium. After that, nobody thinks or talks about them. The people are not raising issues about the fact that their leaders have no constituency offices, the lawmakers. So now, when you have that kind of a situation, leadership becomes the primary variable for driving both political and economic equilibrium. What do I mean? Everybody is interested only in himself, and the leader comes out and begins to take steps that shock everybody. Actually, he's concerned about everyone else. And I'll cite an example. As special assistant to the Minister of Transport, Ujoma Dwekwe, I was with him when his town summoned him to a meeting in the dead of night in his village. What was the query? You've been minister for this number of months and we're not feeling the impact. Yeah, people are not getting contracts. This is Nigeria's money. And what did he say? I'm appointed transport minister for the Federal Republic of Nigeria. And if I focus on just my state, my locality, and my people, there'll be nobody for Nigeria. If other ministers like me do the same thing, what do you expect? You're supposed to be Obasanjo's workmen, creating reassurance. Of course, that annoyed a lot of people, but it struck me as a reason why I should work with a man like that. Now, what am I leading up to? The new government has been sworn in has to give signals that will affect expectations. Once there are no signals and it looks like business as usual, we've lost the race even before we began. So I don't see how the people come into it, because the people have been sufficiently and thoroughly and exhaustively demobilized as critical variables on national policy issues, on matters pertaining to development, among other things. So they are there waiting. Imagine that different reflexes begin to come out. Imagine that you now go to the north and you're talking about development, not dashing them money that you're dealing with the poor. Where does that happen on earth? That you sustain that volume of expenditure all over the country and you're borrowing money to give people to eat? Yes, you borrow money to take a chieftaincy title. After that, who will pay for your regalia? That's the kind of borrowing that's been going on, which he has to ensure that it does not happen at all. And he also has to review the agencies of government and institutions that need to exist. Here I may be mistaken, but I'll place my view on the table. I believe that an organization like the NDDC does not need to exist. We have governors in all those areas, move the money there, let them quarrel, whatever it is. Then you have the Northeast Development Commission, you have Ministry for Humanitarian Affairs, spending platforms. Some of the two organizations I've mentioned, for instance, they create jobs for the elite, the board membership spreads across all over the country. Once the state has to move back, it has to shrink. The number of agencies are too many, they are not delivering anything, nobody's taking inventory. Bola Tinubu has to revisit the Orosanye report. Because after that report, we've created so many other agencies, all of them of questionable relevance, and we are threatening and promising to create more. And I'll cite one that very popular, but which I don't agree with. I think they are thinking about the Commission for Electoral Crimes. Whatever you do in an election is already in the law. If you disrupt elections, that's disturbance of public peace, assault, all of it. Assign these things to the courts. Let the judiciary grow stronger by retaining its integrity in managing all acts of misconduct that need adjudication. The cannibalization increases costs without delivering any real value. Those are some of the things he must begin to ask himself. If the CID department exists, and there are so many other crime agencies, what are they all doing? He must also ask himself why certain things need to go the way they are going. Look at the number of agencies, look at the number of ministries. So the people are not very strong factors in this conversation, and you can't weed them in by just making an announcement. Many of them don't understand the issues. At this point, leadership is what matters. And when the signals from the leaders are more inclusive, you don't find leaders talking about East, West, North, Middle Belt, and the rest of it, then the people also begin to key in. But for that not to happen, the leaders of these various regions I've mentioned must sense that they belong, that they are recognized, that they are taken seriously, and that they are part of the Nigerian equation. For as long as that doesn't happen, every person you meet will be an indigene of his locality, not a citizen of the Federal Republic of Nigeria. And he will have no loyalty to Nigeria, and he will support, and you're seeing it everywhere. But again, I believe it's a matter for another day.
Right. Professor, you've said a lot of things there, and I'm sure a lot of people will connect with quite a few things that you've said. But sort of I suppose everybody is looking for some kind of thing to hold on to. I mean, what are the spaces in your sort of assessment of President Tinubu, I mean, in the past when he wasn't president, where he seems to have connected with the Nigerian public? What are the examples of where he's, for instance, doubled down and really fought on behalf of the Nigerian people, possibly from a policy standpoint?
Well, I'll go back to the Nadeko days. Even though it wasn't policy or substantive intervention for somebody in government, it was an attempt to influence policy in order to support equity, fairness, among other things. He was very active. He could have lost his life at that time. So you can't ignore that that was patriotic, genuinely so. As governor, well, I remember there was a tiff, if you like, when some controversies also arose about him. Then I was chairing the editorial board of Comet, which is now The Nation. I wrote an article, what was it again? A Governor at Work, when they tried to do some PR. It was Dele Alake also, they did some PR for him and all of that. Now, the very next day, somebody came from his office to talk to me. Oh, you know, they are trying to explain themselves. One thing you will give him is his capacity to get into all the nooks and crannies. He must have a very good way of managing his own efficiencies in terms of deployment of people. Now, if you take his tenure in Lagos, you know, and this is not about praise or blame, it's about facts.